Welcome to this interview skills webinar on competency-based interviews on the STAR technique. So competency-based questions are becoming increasingly popular in a lot of different fields and sectors, and they're featured in a high percentage of financial crime agent interviews. And that's because they allow the interviewer to make an objective and fair assessment of a candidate's experience and the qualities that make them suitable for the job. And in terms of recognizing a competency-based question, the questions will usually start with something like, "Tell me about a time when." Uh, it might be something like, "Tell me about a time when you dealt with a customer complaint." Um, or it could be phrased in a similar way. It could be, "Tell me about a situation when such and such happened," or "Give an example of a time when." But it's going to start in a similar way to that. So if you hear a question that starts similarly to "Tell me about a time when," you can recognize that this is a competency-based or behavioral-based type of question. So what I've noticed from interviewing a lot of people as an interviewing manager, and also from coaching people in interview skills, is that many people find competency-based interview questions to be very difficult to answer. And that's where the STAR method comes in handy. So we're going to talk a little bit about the STAR method now, because the STAR method is a tried and tested technique or method that helps people answer competency-based interview questions. So first, I'm going to summarize what it is briefly, and then we'll go into each aspect in more detail. So STAR is an acronym that stands for situation, task, action, and result. So like I said, I'll summarize them briefly first. So situation, with situation, you have to explain the situation that you found yourself in. T is for task, describe what task you needed to complete. A is for actions, explain what actions you took. And R is for result, clarify the result of your work. Just by way of warning, it may be less useful for some interview questions, such as strength-based questions or technical interview questions. So don't try to force this technique into every type of interview question. It won't work with every type. And if you try to force it into certain types of interview questions, it won't work. However, if it is an interview question where you're required to give an example, it can be quite suitable for that. So questions, again, that start with "Tell me about a time when," or "Give an example of a time when," it can be quite useful for those type of interview questions. When people are nervous, they often give unstructured answers and miss out on key details. And that's why the STAR method can be so useful, because it helps you to structure your answer and it helps to make sure that you don't miss out on those key details. So by using the step-by-step method, you will be able to answer each question in a systematic manner without forgetting the important details. So in relation to the STAR method, asking about soft skills such as teamwork, negotiation, communication, problem solving, and others is especially popular for interviewers. Using this method of answering interview questions can help you to provide concrete examples or proof that you possess the experience and the skills for the job at hand. So now let's break down each portion of the STAR method. So the S in the STAR technique stands for situation. So the situation is about setting the scene or giving a context and background to the situation. When you're outlining the situation, what you're not doing here is saying what your task was. You're not explaining your actions yet, and you're not explaining your result yet. All you're doing is including details of the project you were working on, perhaps, maybe who you were working with, when it happened, where you were, or details of a problem or challenge that you faced. So it's setting the scene, as I said earlier. Now it's this scene, it's this situation, then that leads to the task. Now, this might be a task that your manager set for you. It might be a task your manager gave you, or it might be a self-assigned task. And when I say a self-assigned task, an example of that might be, say you were dealing with a customer who made a complaint, and the complaint came to you. So in that situation, it's not necessarily that the manager will have told you to deal with that complaint, but it will be that you have set that task for yourself. You've been proactive. Somebody's come to you with a complaint. You've set a task for yourself to resolve the complaint. So the situation is the complaint. Your task then is to resolve the complaint. So when we're talking about task, this is more specific to your exact role in the situation. So when explaining the task, you need to outline exactly what you did. What was your role? And I'm emphasizing your role and what you did, because it's about what you did, not what your colleagues did. You need to ensure that the interviewer knows what you were tasked with rather than the rest of the team. So T is for task. The A in the STAR technique stands for actions. This is the most important part of the STAR technique because it allows you to highlight what your response was and what actions you took. So you need to talk about what you specifically did. So using I rather than we is really important here. I've seen in interviews, when I've interviewed candidates and also when I've done mock interviews with people as a career and interview coach, that a lot of people will say, we did this and we did that. But when you do that, you're not really showing to the interviewer that you have the skills or experience in relation to the question that's asked, because they won't be able to distinguish then what you did as opposed to what your colleagues did. And it sounds like you were just being pulled along by your colleagues and you didn't maybe really do much. And even if you did, they don't know based on how you're answering it. So you need to talk about what you specifically did. You can talk about how you incorporated your colleagues into things, but you need to talk about what you did. Otherwise, you won't be evidencing the necessary skills that the employer is looking for. And when you're sharing actions, it's important to share a lot of detail, as the interviewer will not be familiar with your history or your task. What you're trying to get across here is how you assessed and decided to take a certain course of action. So it's not just about what actions you took, but it's also explaining how you decided to take those actions as well. And then the result. The result is incredibly, incredibly important as well. A lot of people miss out on stating what the result was. They might state what their task was. They might state some of their actions, but they often forget to state the result. And that's key because it shows to the interviewer that your actions had impact, that it resulted in something. And naturally, the result should be a positive one. If possible, the result should also be quantifiable. So examples of that, what I mean by quantifiable is examples could include an increase in financial crimes being prosecuted, for example, by 15%, or saving the team time, maybe saving the team 5 hours per week. Maybe you've implemented a new AI tool at work. And because you've implemented this tool, you researched and you implemented this tool, maybe you saved your team 20 hours a week. So that would be a quantifiable result, something very specific. The interviewer will also want to know what you learned from this situation and if there's anything that you do differently next time you were faced with that situation. A lot of people feel shy with sharing what they learned from the situation and if they do anything differently because they feel it will show a sign of weakness, that they have to say, I learned this or I did something different. I would do this different next time. But actually, it's not at all, because if you've outlined very clearly the actions you took, why you took them, and you have a great result that's come out of that, a very obvious and quantifiable result that shows that you demonstrated the skill that was being asked about, then outlining what you've learned and what you do differently is really just added value. It's showing to the interviewer that you're a reflective professional and that you aim to get better every time. So, as much as your result was amazing and it was great, as outlined in your example, you're showing that you're driven to make it even better next time, and that when you finish a project or a task, that you think through the project or task and how you can even make it better next time. And instead of that making you look weak, it'll make you look like a stronger, reflective professional. So, to help us understand the STAR method better and how it could be used in a real life example, I've put here this example of a question that might be asked and a situation example of how somebody might structure their example using the STAR technique. So, for this, would somebody be willing to read the example? So I'm going to ask the question, and if somebody would be willing to read through the example, that would be great. So the question is, tell me about a time when you carried out a financial crime investigation. So is anyone willing to read this example from the screen?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
In my previous role as a financial crime investigator at XYZ Bank, I encountered a situation where there was a sudden surge in suspicious transactions within a client's account. The bank had flagged it as potentially involving money laundering activities. Task. My task was to conduct a detailed investigation, ensuring that every aspect of the suspicious transactions was thoroughly examined. This was crucial not only for regulatory compliance, but also to protect the bank and its clients from potential financial crime risks. Action. Firstly, I initiated communication with the client to gather additional information, maintaining a delicate balance to not alert any potential wrongdoers. Simultaneously, I collaborated with the bank's internal compliance team to analyze transaction patterns, cross referencing against known money laundering indicators. Action. Utilizing advanced analytical tools, I traced the origin and destination of the funds, identifying any anomalies in the transaction chain. I also liaised with external law enforcement agencies to share relevant information discreetly. Recognizing that time was of the essence, I led a dedicated team, each member focusing on a specific aspect of the investigation. Regular meetings were conducted to ensure a smooth flow of information and to adjust our strategy based on emerging insights. Result. Our meticulous investigation unveiled a sophisticated money laundering operation involving several linked accounts across multiple jurisdictions. We enabled law enforcement to disrupt a money laundering scheme estimated to involve tens of millions of dollars. The collaboration with law enforcement led to the arrest of key individuals involved in the scheme. As a result of our prompt and comprehensive action, the bank not only prevented potential financial losses, but also strengthened its reputation for robust financial crime prevention. Our intervention prevented potential losses exceeding several $million by identifying and blocking a series of suspicious transactions. The case was cited as an example of effective collaboration between the private sector and law enforcement in tackling transactional financial crime. This experience reinforced the importance of proactive and collaborative approaches in financial crime prevention. It also showcased my ability to navigate complex situations, utilize advanced tools, and work efficiently with cross-functional teams to achieve successful outcomes in challenging scenarios.
Thank you so much, Nita. I appreciate it. So in this example, the interviewee clearly outlined the situation they faced, described clearly the task that they had to carry out and why they had to carry out this task, explained the actions that they took in great detail, including how and why they took these actions, and then shared a quantifiable result, outlining what they learned and the skills that helped them achieve that result. So that's a very powerful answer. It's a great way, it shows a great way that you can use the STAR technique to demonstrate that you have the skill outlined in the question that was asked. So just as a reminder of the STAR technique and what it is, so S stands for situation, where you explain the situation that you found yourself in. T is for task, describe what the task was that you needed to complete. A is for action, explain what actions you took. And R is for result, clarify the result of your work. So now that we've looked at what competency-based interviews are and why they're used and how to identify these questions, and also looked at the STAR technique, what it is and how it benefits you, we're going to now look for a moment at how to prepare for an interview using the STAR technique. So first, what you need to do is make a list of the skills and experiences that are required for the job based on the job description. So you should have a job description or a role profile. So you look at that job description and role profile and look at what it states are the skills, experiences, and knowledge components required for the job, and also the duties of the job. On the basis of that, you can list them out. You can list them in a Word document or in a Google Doc and have them as headers. Then consider specific examples of times that you displayed those skills. And within that, reflect on the situation, task, action, and result in each example. So as I already said, that you can write the skills and experience and knowledge components as headers in the Word document. You can now then write your examples under these headers in the Word or Google document and write out these examples. Once you've done that, then read and rehearse these examples several times before the interview so that they become second nature to you, and link them to anticipated questions that you might be asked at interview. Now, sometimes you might come up with an example based on a question that you think you might be asked, and you're never asked that question at interview. However, that same example might come in handy for another question or a similar question where that example still fits with that question as well. So having many examples ready to go will then benefit you even if you're not asked that specific question. Another tip, in addition to looking at the role profile or job description to anticipate questions that way and to think of examples based on the job description, another tip is to look at common competency-based interview questions and try to answer them as well using the STAR method. This is something that I supply to my clients when I work with them. I'll share with them common competency-based questions. We rehearse them together and look at them together. So that's something that I commonly do when I'm in interviews. We're going to look at some tips for answering STAR questions. So the first tip is be specific. When answering a question using the STAR method, be specific with your answer. So general actions such as working harder or results such as things got better or my manager was happy will not impress your interviewer as they're not measurable. You need to be more specific. You need to be clear. The best answers, rather, will give specific numbers or form of quantifiable success to easily prove to your interviewer that your actions had impact. Second, make it relevant. If your interviewer is asking you a question about a specific competency, make sure your answer demonstrates that competency. For example, if the question is about problem solving, share or think about a creative way that you've solved a problem. My experience in working with clients and also as an interviewing manager is I'm amazed with how often you ask somebody a specific competency-based question and their answer doesn't even relate. It's entirely different. So it's really important to listen very carefully to the question, what is being asked? And before you respond, to think, is my response going to address the question? Is my example fitting to the question? Because many people, they go off on an entirely different topic. And if you do that, you won't score any points on that question. Timing. Avoid rushing your answers and speaking too quickly. If you rush your answers or speak too quickly, you might appear unconfident or even incompetent. However, at the same time, you must make sure your answers don't drag on for too long either. Your answer should be about 2 to 3 minutes long, and in that time, you should ensure that only the most potent and relevant information is mentioned. Something I've noticed again, as an interviewing manager and as a career coach supporting people with interview prep, is a lot of people waffle. They're not giving specific actions that they've took. They're not talking about any sort of quantifiable result or what they have achieved. Your amount of time that you have is only about 2 to 3 minutes, and you have to pick the most important and relevant information and discuss that. And that's why, again, if you're using the STAR technique, it helps you because it structures your answer and it helps to make sure you're not waffling. If you need help with any of this, contact me at brianvanderwaal.com/contact-us. I provide career coaching, interview coaching, CV writing, cover letter writing, enhancing LinkedIn profiles, and more. Further, you can access free information at brianvanderwaal.com. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'm here to help. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it.